Today, I have the opportunity to spend some time with Dr. Beth. And Dr. Beth is just outside of Chicago, and she is a chiropractic physician specializing in homeopathy, nutrition, and total health transformation. And it's that last part that I think is really important and why I'm so glad we'll have the chance to talk, Beth, because it's that total health transformation that can be both inviting and so overwhelming.
Most definitely.
Right? So what we're going to do is break it down into manageable bites. So one thing that you mentioned is probably at the top of a lot of people's lists, or probably should be at the top of their lists, is inflammation. So just to start with, what would you say, why is inflammation such a problem in our society?
Well, I think 90%, research shows 90% of chronic disease in the world today is caused by inflammation. Now, that can be driven by lack of sleep, environment, the food we eat, the drugs we take, the things we watch on TV, the things we read, the people we surround ourselves with, chronic stress. So you have to take all of that into account when you're talking about inflammation, really. So sometimes it takes a while to break all that apart and assess each individual situation. So
Well, let's try to do it a little bit, at least to address the things that people might see in their own lives. Because some of the things that you mentioned, the things we eat, maybe the drugs we take, we have control over those things, but we don't always have the education to know what to do, particularly when it comes to food, the diet. There's just so much. It feels honestly almost like propaganda sometimes, that just when you think you've got the right thing, somebody comes and they don't just introduce a new thing. They tell you why the thing you've been doing is totally wrong.
exactly.
So if what we're putting in our bodies, whether it is in the way of food or drugs, is causing inflammation, what would that, how would that show up in our lives? What would we look for?
Inflammation in the very beginning is good. It tells us that something is going on in our body, right? So let's say you get a mosquito bite, and if you get a little pain, or if you get a little redness, you get a little swelling, that or maybe something else that produces a fever in the body, that tells us, hey, our immune system is working. So a little bit of inflammation is good. The problem is when it becomes too much inflammation. For example, let's take food. So about 60 to 75% of our immune system is located in our gut. Anytime we eat anything, our body or our gut, our immune system has to decide if this is something that is good for our bodies or if it's something that we want to just detox and get rid of. When we eat things that are irritating to the lining of our gut, I'll say, the body kind of comes around it and attacks it and forms little holes in the lining of the gut, and the nutrition seeps out of those holes and waste products come in and irritate the lining. Our skin often becomes the place where the body expresses digestive issues the most. And so you get things like psoriasis, eczema, acne. And so whenever I see a patient with a skin issue, we'll say, first thing I look at is the gut, just right off the bat. Let's say they become food allergies or sensitivities. So if not paid attention to, these things can progress into chronic disease, ulcerative colitis, irritable bowel disease. We could just glaze over and say, not dig deep and just say, hey, we're going to address what's on your skin and not get to what I'll say is the root cause of what's going on, and therefore not, really heal the body. So
And we do live in a society who wants to solve the the symptom, right? So if you have
mhm,
skin issues, then spend money on the lotion,
absolutely.
which I'm not, whatever, maybe the lotion is good, but if it doesn't address the problem, you're just going to have to buy a lotion, I would assume, for the rest of your life.
Exactly.
Wow.
Exactly. I don't want to rule out lack of sleep, chronic
Mhm.
stress, like we mentioned before, drugs and pollution, environment.
Right. I would
Hmm.
think it would almost become cyclical in part of what you've said. So if you have inflammation and if that affects your sleep, I would
Hmm.
guess it would just increase your inflammation, which would increase your stress and lack of sleep.
And it just keeps building, right?
Oh, okay.
Right,
Well, we don't want to get depressing.
right, right, right.
So
Yeah,
instead, but I do think it's important to not walk around with blinders and to not be so stuck on fixing the symptom, that
yes,
we don't recognize that you have more power than you might be trained to think in our
absolutely.
society of media. We'll just leave it at the society of media.
Mhm, yeah.
What are some other things that their body might be telling them that they have these issues, this issue of inflammation? What are some other symptoms that they would look for?
And anything that ends with itis, itis, is
Mhm.
inflammation, right? So
Oh,
sinusitis, prostatitis, appendicitis, conjunctivitis.
arthritis.
People say, I have arthritis, but they don't think of that as an inflammatory condition. They just think they have arthritis. Well, that's inflammation.
I,
So,
I would think it's probably safe to say a lot of people, even if they know it, they might
mhm,
not make that connection.
not correlated. Yes,
Right.
yes, yeah,
So
yeah.
let's give people some hope. What are some things that we can do on a daily basis to try to make better choices, even if we're just trying to figure out what's going on? Maybe we can't fix it by ourselves, but to
Mhm.
recognize it.
Take kind of a personal inventory, if you will, of how am I sleeping? Number one, how are my bowel habits? What food am I putting into my body? How am I recreating? Am I resting? Do I have time with my community, with my friends, with my family?
Wow.
Exercise. How am I exercising? Do I get exercise? So it's kind of all those lifestyle factors that are underlying, I will say, that you can, like I say, take a personal inventory of.
So I am coming to you as the person who knows little to nothing, legitimately. But I think that that's helpful because I think, unfortunately, that does speak to a lot of people in our society.
Hmm.
I would have recognized that food was a potential issue. I think even when you mentioned sleep, I would think, okay, yeah.
Hmm.
But not until you made the connection to our intestinal, our gut,
Hmm.
does it make sense that it's also the stress and our environment. And then you just mentioned the people that we associate with. There may be people who are going to hear that and push back a little bit and,
Hmm.
and maybe say, you mean to tell me that if I have people who who cause me stress, that I could develop arthritis or something wrong with my body? What would you
Hmm.
say to those people?
I would say that it could be part of the issue, probably not the complete issue, but I encourage patients to take an assessment of, when they feel worse, when their symptoms are exacerbated. Is I often ask patients, where were they born and raised? Were they raised in farmland where there are a lot of pesticides around?
Oh,
Um,
oh, that's so sad because you would think, oh, if they're raised in farmland, then they were outside and
exactly.
they had a really healthy upbringing, but they could
Mhm.
have been certainly exposed to chemicals.
Very much so. Very much so. If people were breastfed or
Mm.
bottle fed, that makes a difference in the terrain of their gut and how that is kind of formed from kind of the ground up, if you will. And so, really spending time hashing all that out is super important before things just progress and progress and build and build and build. And then, it's going to take twice as much work to get back to where they were. And so I just really encourage anybody to reach out, let's find some answers.
It would seem that if we as adults learn these things, what a gift we would pass on to the next generation to be able to make better choices.
Mm-hmm.
And there are some obvious things like don't eat fast food all the time or ever, but
Yeah, exactly.
But even more basic things that we might think we're doing well,
Mm-hmm.
maybe it'd be nice to be exposed to a more holistic view.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But then the second thing is kind of the other spectrum. You said, as you described it, it's best to catch it when you can. What if someone is at the state where they feel like I'm just too far gone? Like, I need something more severe
Mm-hmm.
than a holistic homeopathic. Because I think there's something in our psyche that thinks if it's really bad, we're going to need maybe surgery. Like if it's extreme, we need extreme to fix it. What are your thoughts on that?
I co-manage a lot of people. And it's never too late, I would say.
Nice.
It's never too late, and it's never too early either.
Yeah.
So,
but I do want people who are listening or watching this to just pay attention.
Mm-hmm.
I think in the way we are made, we don't really think about the reality of things until it's thrown at us.
Mm-hmm.
And
Absolutely.
so often it feels like that reality only shows itself once things have gone on for so long.
Mm-hmm.
So if you can do the work in advance, certainly do the work in advance. Again, just to make it as simple as possible, because if we don't know to make the connections, we're just not going to make the connections. We'll go out and buy NyQuil, right?
Right. Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah.
Yes. So sinusitis, arthritis. I mentioned appendicitis, but prostatitis, just anything with itis on the end tells me that in fact is inflammation in the body.
So if somebody is watching this and they're hearing some similarities between the symptoms and the lifestyle maybe that you're describing and their own, besides creating this sort of journal and paying attention to things, would you recommend anything else before they start working with you? Or should it be do this work and then it's time to really get some help?
If they're tired of being tired, then it's time to really address the situation.
So if you're listening to this, if you're in sight or in earshot of this, and whether it's you or someone you know, and that sounds so cheesy, if it's you or someone you know, but odds are we all know someone who just doesn't feel good. And if it's something that you can control, like what you put into your body and what you surround yourself with to avoid pain, oh man, why not? Just contact Dr. Beth. And of course, we'll make sure that her contact information will be available easily to anyone watching. Thank you.
Thank you so much.